disappointment has now defined itself.
Hello and welcome to TOS TV, your digital first Pan-African network. I am Nkamian John, and this is TOS News Track. These are the stories we are tracking at this time. Acting Canadian High Commissioner Nicholas Simad has said his country is willing to support Nigeria with $10 million in its battle against insecurity. Simad said this when he visited the Minister of Police Affairs, Mohammed Maigari, in Abuja, the nation's capital city. He stressed the need to build the capacity of personnel of the police force, amongst other things, to diminish violence in the country. The Minister of Police Affairs said the cordial relationship between Nigeria and Canada has grown stronger over the years. He said Canada's quest and support in promoting human rights, peace and unity, not only in Nigeria but in Africa at large, cannot be overly emphasized. The minister said the Nigerian government has put every mechanism in place to make sure that no individual right is tampered, as well as ensure the security of lives and properties of citizens. The Nigerian government has announced plans to organize another tripartite stakeholders meeting, as they have reiterated their commitment towards resolving the insistent gridlock and truck menace on the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. This disclosure was made by the Coordinating Director, Highway Construction and Rehabilitation in Nigeria, Folusho Adebiyi, on Saturday during an inspection tour of the ongoing Lagos-Ibadan Expressway Rehabilitation and Reconstruction Project. While expressing regret that the constant presence of articulated trucks parking indiscriminately on the Ogare section of the ongoing Lagos-Ibadan Expressway project is damaging new construction work on the highway, he said that drastic steps must be taken to tackle the problem in each of these states in conjunction with their governments. Adebiyi, during an earlier inspection of Section 1 of the highway, which stretches from Ojota in Lagos to Shagamu Interstate Interchange, said the federal government was constructing 2 major additional interchanges. He also added that 2 flyovers were being constructed on Section 1, in addition to 14 existing ones on other stretch in Ogun and Oyo, to curb gridlock and improve safety of life of new communities along those axes. Now, the Social Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP, has urged the Senate President, Dr. Ahmad Lawan, and his Speaker of House of Representatives, Femi Gbajabiamila, to urge review the 2021 appropriation legislation to stop the government of President Muhammadu Buhari from selling public properties to fund the 2021 budget, and to identify areas in the budget to cut, such as salaries and allowances for members and the presidency, to make sayings to the addressing of the growing level of deficit and borrowing of the country. In a later date, dated 16 January 2021 and signed by SERAP Deputy Director Kolawole Oluwadare, he said, and I quote, "Selling valuable public properties to fund the 2021 budget will be counterproductive, as this would be vulnerable to corruption and mismanagement. It would undermine the social contract with Nigerians, leaving the government worse off, and hurt the country in the long run. It's neither necessary nor in public interest." End of quote. According to the organization, the country's fiscal situation must be changed, and changed quickly, through some combination of cuts in spending on salaries and allowances and a freeze on spending in certain areas of the budget. SERAP also urged the National Assembly to stop approving loan requests by the federal government if it continues to fail to demonstrate transparency and accountability in the spending of the loans so far obtained. It said, and I quote, "We would consider the option of pursuing legal action to stop the federal government from selling public properties, and we may join the National Assembly in any such suit." Now, in furtherance of its effort to create an enabling environment for all Nigerians and legal residents to obtain their digital identity number, the federal government has approved the setting up of a National Identity Number (NIN) Enrollment Center at the Federal Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The approval was contained in a statement signed by the Technical Assistant Information Technology to the Minister of Communication and Digital Economy, Dr. Isa Alim Ibrahim. Dr. Femi Adeolu on Sunday. Now, according to Adeoluyi, the DEX will be set up by Tuesday, 19th of January 2021. He said the center will provide support for members of the diplomatic corps and will be managed by the Federal Ministry of Communications and Digital Economy through the National Identity Management Commission. He explains that the center is being set up based on the request of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Godfrey Onyema, in order to simplify the process for diplomats. The law has made it mandatory for Nigerians and legal residents to obtain a NIN since 2007, but compliance has been low until recently. The minister, however, reiterated the commitment of the Federal Ministry of Communication and Digital Economy to create an enabling environment for all Nigerians and legal residents to obtain their digital identity number. Now, virologists and other medical experts have warned that 100,000 doses of COVID-19 vaccine and in the country is expecting may be useless if proper arrangements are not made for their transportation and storage. Now, Professor of Virology at the University of Ibadan, David Olaileye, advised government to ensure proper storage and transportation of the vaccines to achieve its desired result. He also said another major challenge would be how to transport the vaccine at a temperature of 70 degrees centigrade to rural areas. According to him, in future, Nigeria may need to buy other types of vaccines that do not require low temperature, such as that of Pfizer. Now, the Chief Executive Officer of the Institute of Human Virology, Nigeria, Dakun, said the shipping and storage condition of Pfizer vaccine needs 70 degrees centigrade. According to him, there must be constant power supplies at the storage facilities. He therefore warned that the vaccine would be useless if the conditions were not met. A medical virologist at Adeleke University, Ede, Osun State, Southwest Nigeria, Dr. Oladipo Kolawole, also added that the effectiveness of the Pfizer vaccine could not be guaranteed without proper storage. He added that the need for the federal and state governments to sensitize Nigerians for the need to take the COVID-19 vaccines. Kolawole added that there was the need for government to liaise with religious leaders to ensure that their members turn up for vaccination. But the president, Nigeria Academy of Science, Professor Motsu Onoha, advised Nigerians not to worry about the storage of the COVID-19 vaccines. You are watching TOS News Track. Ahead is global news, and do stay with us. Welcome back. And now to some news from the African continent and, of course, around the world. Clashes erupted in Tunisia for a fourth consecutive evening on Sunday in a neighborhood close to the capital, Tunis, where hundreds of youths rocked at a riot, hewed rocks at riot police who responded with tear gas. The protesters began during the start of a coronavirus lockdown on January the 14th, which was 10 years to the day since the autocratic leader Ben Ali fled from power. Now, despite the resolution a decade ago, many Tunisians are increasingly angered by poor public service and the political class, with high consumer prices, shrinking GDP at about the third of young people remain unemployed. The health crisis and ensuing economic misery has pushed growing numbers of Tunisians to seek to leave the country. Interior Ministry spokesman Khalid Hayounin said earlier Sunday that dozens of young people, mostly aged between 14 and 17, had been arrested after they took to the streets during the previous evening to loot and vandalize shop fronts and cars. Videos circulating on social media showed young people burning tires, insulting the police, and looting shops. Sousse, usually a magnet for foreign holidaymakers, but hit hard by the pandemic, also saw rioting. Tunisia had been under a nighttime curfew even before the recent lockdown, a 4-day measure meant to expire on Sunday at midnight. Moroccan Jews may be packing their suitcases to board direct flights to Israel after the kingdom normalized ties in December in a U.S. brokered deal. But tickets for regular commercial flights are yet to go on sale due to bureaucratic delays and the coronavirus pandemic. The first direct commercial flight headed to Tel Aviv from Rabat in December after Morocco became the 6th Arab League member to normalize ties with Israel. As part of the deal, the United States agreed to recognize Morocco's claim over the disputed Western Sahara region. Many in Casablanca welcome peace and the possibility for tourist benefits. Israel had established liaison offices in Morocco in 1990, but they were closed in the early 2000s when relations broke down after the outbreak of the Palestinian uprising. Yet relations quietly continued with some $149 million in bilateral trade between 2014 and 2017, according to Moroccan news reports. Now, the reopening of the liaison office could make it much easier for Moroccans to obtain visa to visit Israel. Morocco is home to North Africa's biggest Jewish community and the ancestral home of some 700,000 Israelis. It was boosted in the 15th century by Jews expelled from Spain and by the late 1940s, which reached some 250,000 people, around a tenth of the population. But that figure tumbled as many Moroccan Jews headed to the newly founded state of Israel. Now, away from the African continent onto the international scene, where Canada prepares for the return of the Boeing 737 MAX to Canadian skies for the first time in almost 2 years. Now, Canada's two largest airlines are grappling with how to ease passenger wariness about the jet's reputation during a time of heightened anxiety around flying. Now, countries worldwide grounded the MAX in March of 2019 after two crashes just months apart in Indonesia and Ethiopia, which killed 346 people, including 18 Canadians and families that were permanent residents. Now, Transport Canada hasn't specified the date when Canadian Airlines can resume using the 737 MAX for passenger flights, but said it's imminent. Airlines expect an announcement could come as soon as this week. Now, as WestJet aims to return its fleet to service on January 21, the carrier had been tracking public opinion. The airline conducted a series of surveys with more than 800 Canadian flyers online over an 18-month period. Now, the result shows that pre-pandemic in September of 2019, 59% of flyers surveyed showed they would not be comfortable flying on a MAX when it returns to passenger service as the pandemic wore on. That number of wary travelers grew to 75% in October. Canadian travelers in Western and Atlantic Canada, along with business travelers, said they were more likely to get back on a 737 MAX. To try and ease that apprehension, WestJet has released a new web page with a safety video and a new policy. It says it's centered around transparency. Air Canada is aiming to start flying the MAX on February 1 and said it plans to roll out a similar policy and dedicate a web page to educate the public about the safety of the aircraft. Now, U.S. Vice President-elect Kamala Harris will resign her Senate seat on Monday, 2 days before she and President-elect Joe Biden are inaugurated. Aides to the California Democrat confirmed the timing and said Governor Gavin Newsom was aware of her decision, clearing the way for him to appoint new Democrat Alex Padilla, now California's Secretary of State, to serve the final 2 years of Harris's term. Now, Harris will give no farewell Senate floor speech. The Senate is not scheduled to reconvene until Tuesday, the eve of the inauguration day. Harris will be the first black woman and first woman of South Asian descent to serve as vice president, but her Senate departure leaves the chamber's roster without a black woman. Harris was just the second black woman senator, winning her California election 17 years after Democratic Carol Mosley finished a single term representing Illinois. Now, Meristem Group disclosed that the combined effort in manufacturing COVID-19 vaccines for global use is expected to yield about 6.8 billion doses in 2021. Now, this was revealed in the Annual Outlook 2021 report presented by Meristem Group titled Bracing for a Different Future. Now, according to the report, the existing manufacturing capacity will only be sufficient enough to immunize about 44% of the global population, which would create obvious vaccination gap and make the pandemic last longer than necessary. The report says, and I quote, "The cold temperature requirements for vaccine storage poses major logistic concerns, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa and other low-income countries. World Health Organization estimates that about 50% of vaccines are wasted every year, largely due to a lack of temperature control." Now, according to the report, the estimated 6.8 billion doses are expected to be collaboratively manufactured. You are still watching TOS News Track. This still ahead, business and sports. Do stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. It's still TOS News, and it's time for business, where the government of Nigeria achieved a debt service to revenue ratio of 83% in the year 2020. This is according to the information contained in the budget implementation report of the government for the year ended December 2020. Now, according to the data, total revenue earned in 2020 was 3.93 trillion naira, representing a 27% drop from the target revenue of 5.365 trillion naira. However, debt service for the year was a sum of 3.26 trillion naira, or 82.9% of revenue. Nigeria's debt service cost of 3.26 trillion naira has now dwarfed the 1.7 trillion naira spent on capital expenditure of 1.7 trillion incurred in 2020. This is also the highest debt service paid by the federal government since it started tracking this data in 2009. The total public debt, external and domestic balance carried by Nigeria as of September of 2020 stood at 32.22 trillion naira. That is about 84.57 billion US dollars. Nigeria's debt to GDP ratio is estimated at about 22%, one of the lowest in the world and much below what is obtainable in most emerging markets. In 2021, the government projects a debt service of 3.1 trillion against revenue and of 6.6 trillion naira, or a debt service to revenue ratio of 46.9%. And now let's go to sports, where FIFA President Gianni Infantino concluded a 2-day trip to Cameroon, where he met with dignitaries of the country and key officials from the Confederation of African Football (CAF) and the Cameroonian Football Association (FECAFOOT). The trip coincided with the start of the African Nations Championship (CHAN), which is being hosted in 3 Cameroonian cities from January 16th to February 7th of 2021. He was quoted as saying, and I quote, "Equally meeting with CAF and FECAFOOT officials, it was important to show FIFA's support to football in Cameroon and across the African continent, especially as the African Nations Championship just kicked off. The first international tournament being played in 2021, and spectators are attending matches according to the safety protocols which have been established." The FIFA president said, where he was received in a private audience by Paul Paul Biya, the President of the Republic of Cameroon, at the Unity Palace in Yaoundé on Friday. Subsequently, he attended a ceremony which conferred the title of CAF Honorary President to Issa Hayatou, who presided over the Confederation from 1988 to 2017. He also said that and I quote, "It sends an important message to have football restart in Africa, particularly in an indisputable football country such as Cameroon." The event has also received support from FIFA, as since October 2020, CAF has been using FIFA's COVID relief fund grant of $2 million to restart their competitions, with the medical protocols, flights and accommodations for match officials at Chan being subsidized through the funding. And that brings us to the end of News Track on your digital first Pan-African network, TOS TV network. For more updates, do visit our website, www.tostvnewsnetwork.com. Do follow and like TOS TV network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And remember to subscribe to our YouTube page. TOS TV is also available on TS TV as TOS News on channel 138. Do stay with us and enjoy more programs on TOS TV network. I am Kamian John.